In the quiet solitude of a small coastal town, where the ocean's whispers mingled with the rustling of ancient trees, lived a young woman named Elara. Her days were spent tending to her grandmother's flower shop, nestled between weathered cottages that seemed to lean toward one another like old friends sharing secrets. The shop, adorned with vibrant blooms and trailing ivy, was her sanctuary, a place where she found solace in arranging petals into intricate patterns while listening to the distant crash of waves. Elara had always been drawn to the mysteries of the universe, often spending her nights gazing at the stars through an old telescope perched on the cliffs overlooking the sea. She dreamed of worlds beyond her own, of civilizations hidden among constellations, and of answers to questions humanity had yet to ask. Her fascination with the cosmos was not merely academic. It stemmed from a deep yearning for connection, for something greater than herself. Each night, as she traced celestial bodies across the sky, she felt an inexplicable pull, a longing that neither time nor distance could quell. The townsfolk knew Elara as kind-hearted but reserved, someone who preferred the company of flowers and starlight over idle chatter. They spoke of her late-night vigils by the cliffs, wondering if she sought love or escape in those endless skies. Yet no one truly understood the ache within her, a loneliness that stretched far beyond human comprehension. It wasn't just companionship she craved. It was purpose, meaning, a sense of belonging to something vast and eternal. One fateful evening, as twilight painted the horizon in hues of amber and violet, Elara noticed something unusual in the heavens above. A faint glow appeared near the constellation Orion, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. At first, she thought it might be a satellite or perhaps an optical illusion caused by atmospheric disturbances. But as hours passed, the light grew brighter, shifting colors from soft gold to deep emerald before settling into an iridescent shimmer unlike anything she had ever seen. Curiosity gripped her heart as tightly as the cold wind biting at her cheeks. She adjusted the telescope's focus, peering closer at the anomaly. Through the lens, the light resolved into what looked like a cluster of crystalline structures suspended in space, their surfaces refracting starlight in dazzling patterns. As she watched, mesmerized, one of the larger crystals detached itself from the group and began descending toward Earth, leaving behind a trail of luminous particles that sparkled against the darkening sky. Elara's breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary meteorite or spacecraft. It moved with intention, almost gracefully, as though guided by intelligence rather than gravity. Her pulse quickened as the object drew nearer, its descent slowing until it hovered silently above the ocean, casting rippling reflections onto the water below. For a moment, everything around her seemed to still. The waves paused mid-crest, the breeze died away, even the crickets ceased their chirping. All that remained was the hum of energy emanating from the glowing crystal, resonating deep within her chest. Without fully understanding why, Elara felt compelled to approach it. Clutching her coat tighter around her shoulders, she scrambled down the rocky path leading to the beach, her boots crunching against loose stones. The closer she got, the more intense the sensation became, a mixture of awe, fear, and an unshakable certainty that this moment would change everything. When she finally reached the shoreline, the crystal descended further, hovering just above the sand mere feet away from her. Its surface swirled with intricate patterns resembling galaxies, each swirl seeming to pulse in sync with her own heartbeat. And then, without warning, it spoke, not with words, but with a voice that resonated directly in her mind. "You have been watching us," it said, the tone both melodic and commanding, filled with an authority that transcended language. Elara staggered back, her knees buckling beneath her as the realization hit. Whatever this was, it wasn't just intelligent, it knew her. It had been aware of her presence all along. Before she could respond, or even process what was happening, the crystal emitted a blinding flash of light. In that instant, the world dissolved around her, replaced by an overwhelming sensation of weightlessness. She felt herself being lifted, not physically but spiritually, as though every fiber of her being was unraveling and reweaving into something new. And then, just as suddenly, the light faded, leaving her sprawled on the damp sand, gasping for air. When her vision cleared, she saw them, dozens of figures emerging from the ocean, their forms shimmering like liquid silver under the moonlight. They weren't human, though they bore humanoid shapes. Their eyes glowed softly, twin orbs of opalescent light set within faces devoid of any discernible features save for those piercing gazes. One figure stepped forward, taller and more radiant than the rest, exuding an aura of regality that made Elara instinctively bow her head. "You are chosen," the figure intoned, its voice echoing in her mind like a chorus of bells. "Come with me, and you will see wonders beyond your wildest imaginings." Ilara's heart thundered in her chest as she struggled to comprehend the enormity of what was unfolding before her. These beings, these otherworldly entities, had somehow singled her out, plucked her from obscurity like a rare gem unearthed after centuries buried in shadow. Why her? What did they want? Fear clawed at the edges of her consciousness, but beneath it lay an undeniable thrill, a spark of exhilaration that refused to be extinguished. Whatever this was, whatever they intended, she couldn't turn away now. Something inside her whispered that this was the answer she'd been searching for all along. The alien queen extended a hand, her movements fluid and deliberate, as though every gesture carried profound significance. Her touch was cool yet strangely comforting, sending shivers racing up Ilara's spine. Around them, the assembled beings formed a circle, their silvery forms shimmering faintly in the moonlight, creating an ethereal barrier between the mundane world and whatever realm they hailed from. The air vibrated with an unspoken energy, thick with anticipation, as if the very fabric of reality held its breath. Then came the words, spoken not aloud but woven directly into Ilara's thoughts, resonating with a clarity that defied logic. "Marry me," the queen whispered, her voice a symphony of harmonies that seemed to echo through eternity, "and I will take care of you forever." Each syllable carried layers of meaning, promises wrapped in enigmatic beauty, binding her soul to possibilities both wondrous and terrifying. "Marry me." The phrase lingered, heavy with implications Ilara could scarcely begin to grasp. Was this an offer of partnership, devotion, or something far stranger? An alliance between species, realms, dimensions? Her mind raced, torn between disbelief and wonder. Could such a union even exist? What would it mean to bind herself to this being, to step beyond the boundaries of her humanity and into the unknown? Yet even as doubt crept in, she felt an undeniable pull, a magnetic force drawing her closer to the queen, as if some ancient part of her recognized this moment as inevitable. Forever. The word reverberated within her, carrying the weight of infinity. It wasn't just a promise, it was a destiny, one that stretched beyond lifetimes, beyond stars. Ilara's gaze locked with the queen's luminous eyes, pools of light that seemed to hold galaxies within their depths. In that instant, she glimpsed fragments of visions, worlds spinning in kaleidoscopic splendor, civilizations thriving amidst nebulae, and a bond so profound it transcended language, time, and mortality. Her heart clenched, torn between the safety of her familiar life and the intoxicating allure of the extraordinary. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear but from the sheer magnitude of what was being asked of her. To say yes would be to surrender everything she had ever known, to leap into the abyss of the unknown with nothing but trust as her guide. But to refuse would mean turning away from the truth she had always sought, the connection she had yearned for in the vast emptiness of the cosmos. As the moment stretched into eternity, the queen waited patiently, her presence unwavering, her gaze steady. The choice was hers alone to make. Ilara's trembling fingers brushed against the alien queen's cool, radiant hand, a gesture that felt both tentative and monumental. The moment their skin met, a surge of warmth coursed through her veins, igniting sensations she could neither name nor comprehend. It was as though the essence of the universe itself flowed between them, binding her to this being in ways that transcended physical touch. Her breath hitched, her chest tightening with emotions too vast to contain: awe, fear, longing, and an inexplicable sense of homecoming. The queen's eyes softened, their opalescent glow deepening as if reflecting the turmoil within Ilara's heart. Around them, the otherworldly figures shifted subtly, their silvery forms rippling like liquid moonlight. The air seemed alive with anticipation, charged with an energy that pulsed in rhythm with Ilara's racing heartbeat. She felt exposed, as though every corner of her soul had been laid bare before these beings, yet there was no judgment, only acceptance, a profound acknowledgement of her existence that left her feeling both infinitesimal and infinite. The queen leaned closer, her presence enveloping Ilara like a cocoon of light and shadow. "Do you understand?" The queen's voice echoed in her mind, layered with tones that resonated like a celestial choir. "This is not merely a union of two souls. It is a merging of destinies, a bridge between worlds." Ilara swallowed hard, her throat dry despite the salty tang of the ocean breeze. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crashing waves. Her mind raced, grappling with the enormity of the decision before her. To accept this proposal was to step into a life she could scarcely imagine, one where the boundaries of identity, time, and reality blurred into something entirely new. Yet, to deny it would mean returning to a world that suddenly felt unbearably small, her dreams of connection reduced to mere echoes in the void. The Queen tilted her head, studying Alara with an intensity that made her feel both seen and unseen. "You carry within you a yearning for something greater," the Queen continued, her words weaving through Alara's thoughts like threads of starlight. "A desire to transcend the limitations of your existence. I offer you that transcendence. Together, we will forge a legacy that spans galaxies, a bond that will endure when stars burn out and worlds crumble to dust." Tears spilled down Alara's cheeks, tracing paths of vulnerability across her face. She wanted to believe, to trust in the promise of forever, but doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. What did it mean to marry a being whose nature defied comprehension? Would she lose herself in the process, becoming something unrecognizable even to her own reflection? Or would she find a version of herself more complete, more whole, than she had ever dared to dream? Her gaze flickered to the ocean, its surface shimmering under the moon's pale light. Beyond the horizon lay the vast expanse of the cosmos, a tapestry of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. The thought of venturing into that unknown filled her with equal parts terror and exhilaration. She turned back to the Queen, her heart pounding like a drumbeat calling her forward. "If I say yes," she began, her voice trembling, "what happens to me? To us?" The Queen's expression softened further, a glimmer of compassion breaking through her regal demeanor. "You will become more than you are," she replied, her voice a soothing balm against Alara's frayed nerves. "Your humanity will not be erased but elevated, intertwined with my essence. We will share a consciousness, a unity that transcends the barriers of form and thought. You will see the universe as I see it, feel its rhythms as I feel them. And in return, I will cherish and protect you, as no mortal has ever done." Alara's knees threatened to buckle beneath the weight of the Queen's words. Cherish and protect. The promise was intoxicating, a beacon of hope in a life that had often felt adrift. Yet, lingering doubts tugged at her resolve. What of her family, her friends, the fragile connections she had forged in her human existence? Could she truly leave them behind, severing ties to embrace a destiny written in starlight? The Queen seemed to sense her hesitation, her luminous eyes narrowing slightly. "Your past does not vanish," she assured her, her voice imbued with a tenderness that sent shivers coursing through Alara's body. "It becomes part of our foundation, a cornerstone upon which we build our future. You will carry your memories, your loves, your losses. They will shape us, enrich us. But you must choose, Alara. Will you remain tethered to the finite, or will you ascend to the infinite?" Alara's breath hitched, her vision blurring with tears. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, heavier than the ocean itself. She glanced at the Queen's outstretched hand, its glow pulsing gently, inviting her to take the leap. Her own hand trembled as she hesitated, caught between the pull of the familiar and the siren call of the extraordinary. And then, in a moment of clarity that struck like lightning, she realized the truth. She had always been searching for this. Not the alien Queen, not the cosmic grandeur, but the profound connection she now felt radiating from the being before her. It was the answer to the ache she had carried for so long, the missing piece she had never known how to name. Her lips parted, trembling as she prepared to speak the words that would alter the course of her existence. But before she could utter them, the scene shifted. The Queen's form flickered, her radiant presence wavering like a mirage. The silvery figures surrounding them began to dissolve into streams of light, their forms dispersing into the night sky. Panic surged through Alara as she reached out, desperate to hold on to the moment slipping through her fingers. "Wait!" she cried, her voice raw with emotion. "Don't go!" The Queen's gaze softened, tinged with sorrow. "Time is not ours to command," she murmured, her voice fading like the last notes of a haunting melody. "But know this, Alara, the choice remains yours. When the stars align again, I will return. Until then, remember, you are already mine." With those final words, the Queen vanished, her luminous form dissolving into the ether. The beach fell silent once more, the only sound the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Elara stood frozen, her hands still outstretched, her heart aching with a mixture of loss and longing. The encounter had left her changed, her soul imprinted with the memory of a promise that transcended worlds. And though the queen was gone, her presence lingered, a whisper etched into the fabric of Elara's being. Days turned into weeks, yet the memory of the alien queen's proposal clung to Elara like a second skin. Every waking moment was suffused with the weight of the choice she had yet to make, a decision that loomed over her like an impending storm. She returned to her routines, tending the flower shop, arranging bouquets with trembling hands, exchanging polite pleasantries with customers. But her mind was elsewhere, adrift in the vastness of what had transpired. The townsfolk noticed the change in her. The way her gaze often drifted to the horizon as though searching for something beyond their comprehension. Some whispered that she had fallen under some strange enchantment. Others dismissed it as the melancholy of a restless soul. But none could guess the truth, that she had been offered a destiny far greater than any mortal could conceive. At night, Elara resumed her vigil by the cliffs, her telescope trained on the heavens as though willing the stars to reveal their secrets. She scanned the skies obsessively, hoping to catch a glimpse of the crystalline structure or the shimmering figures that had emerged from the ocean. Yet the cosmos remained stubbornly silent, its constellations indifferent to her longing. Sleep eluded her, haunted by dreams of the queen's luminous eyes and the resonance of her voice promising eternity. Each morning, she awoke with a hollow ache in her chest, the absence of the queen's presence more palpable than any physical wound. Her internal conflict consumed her. On one hand, the allure of the infinite beckoned, a chance to transcend her humanity, to explore realms beyond imagination, to belong to something vast and eternal. The queen's words echoed endlessly in her mind. Together, we will forge a legacy that spans galaxies. The thought ignited a fire within her, a yearning for a life unbound by earthly constraints. Yet, on the other hand, the prospect of leaving everything behind, the fragility of human connection, the fleeting beauty of sunsets and laughter, filled her with a grief so profound it threatened to drown her. How could she abandon the life she had built, the people who loved her, for a future she could scarcely comprehend? Elara's grandmother, sensing her granddaughter's turmoil, tried to reach out. "Child," she said one evening as they sat together in the dimly lit kitchen, the scent of lavender tea filling the air, "whatever burden you carry, let it breathe. Sometimes, the hardest choices require patience, not haste." Elara nodded absently, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. She wanted to confide in her grandmother, to pour out the torrent of emotions swirling within her, but how could she explain something she barely understood herself? Instead, she forced a smile and murmured something about stress from work, retreating to her room before the older woman could probe further. Alone in the quiet darkness, Elara stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spiraling. She replayed the queen's words over and over, dissecting each syllable for hidden meanings. "You are already mine," the queen had said, a declaration that felt both possessive and tender. What did it mean to belong to someone, or something, so utterly alien? Was this bond already forming, threading itself into the fabric of her being without her consent? She pressed a hand to her chest, half expecting to feel the thrum of an otherworldly energy coursing through her veins. But all she felt was the steady beat of her human heart, fragile and finite. As the days stretched on, Elara found herself oscillating between moments of clarity and paralyzing indecision. One afternoon, while arranging a bouquet of white roses, she caught sight of her reflection in the shop window. For a brief instant, she imagined the queen standing beside her, her radiant form casting an ethereal glow over the flowers. The vision startled her, shaking her to her core. Was this longing, or was it something more, a premonition of what awaited her if she chose to accept? Her hands trembled as she placed the final rose in the arrangement, her mind racing with possibilities. She began to question whether she was worthy of such a destiny. Who was she, a simple florist from a sleepy coastal town, to be chosen by a being of such majesty? Doubts gnawed at her confidence, whispering cruel truths about her insignificance in the grand scheme of the universe. Yet, even as these thoughts plagued her, she couldn't shake the feeling that the queen had seen something in her, something vital, something irreplaceable. Perhaps it wasn't about worthiness at all, but about potential, about the capacity to grow into something greater. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Elara ventured to the cliffs once more. She sat cross-legged on the damp grass, her telescope forgotten beside her, and gazed out at the endless expanse of ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, their rhythm steady and eternal. Closing her eyes, she let the sound wash over her, trying to quiet the storm within. In that moment of stillness, she felt it, a faint vibration, subtle yet unmistakable, resonating deep within her chest. It was the same sensation she had experienced during the Queen's visit, a hum of energy that seemed to connect her to something far beyond herself. Her eyes snapped open, and she scanned the horizon, her heart pounding. Was it the Queen, reaching out across the void? Or was it merely her imagination, conjuring phantoms to soothe her aching soul? She didn't know. But as she sat there, bathed in the dying light of day, she realized one thing with crystalline clarity. She couldn't keep running from the decision. Whether she accepted or rejected the Queen's proposal, she needed to confront the truth of her own desires, to face the fears that had kept her tethered to the familiar. Taking a deep breath, Elara stood and turned toward the town, her resolve strengthening with each step. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't continue living in limbo, caught between two worlds. Whatever choice she made, it had to come from a place of honesty, from the deepest, most unguarded corners of her heart. And so, with the ocean at her back and the stars beginning to emerge overhead, she walked forward, ready to face the reckoning that awaited her. As the days unfolded, Elara found herself increasingly drawn to the cliffside, her nightly vigils becoming a ritual of both hope and despair. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, its waves whispering secrets she couldn't decipher, while the stars above twinkled with a cold indifference that mirrored her growing unease. Each night, she brought the alien Queen's words with her, repeating them silently like a mantra, "Marry me, and I will take care of you forever." The promise lingered in her mind, a tantalizing thread pulling her toward a future she could scarcely imagine. Yet, with each passing day, the weight of uncertainty grew heavier, pressing down on her chest until it felt difficult to breathe. The townsfolk began to notice the toll this inner turmoil was taking. Her once vibrant flower arrangements now carried an air of melancholy, their colors muted as though reflecting her mood. Customers remarked on how distant she seemed, her smiles fleeting and her responses distracted. Even the shop itself seemed to bear the marks of her unrest. The ivy creeping along the walls appeared less lively, its leaves curling inward as though recoiling from the tension in the air. Her grandmother, ever observant, tried again to coax her into conversation, but Elara deflected with vague reassurances, unwilling, or unable, to articulate the storm raging within her. One evening, as she sat alone in the dim glow of the shop's backroom, surrounded by wilting blooms and scattered petals, Elara allowed herself to confront the depth of her fear. What terrified her most wasn't the prospect of leaving her human life behind, it was the possibility of losing herself entirely. The Queen's promise of transcendence was intoxicating, but it came with a price, the dissolution of everything she had ever known. Would she still recognize herself after merging with a being so fundamentally different? Would her humanity survive, or would it be subsumed by the alien essence of the Queen? These questions gnawed at her, leaving her paralyzed with indecision. Her dreams offered no respite. Night after night, she found herself standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss filled with swirling galaxies and radiant lights. The Queen's voice echoed through these visions, soft yet insistent, urging her to step forward. But each time, just as she gathered the courage to move, the ground beneath her feet would crumble, plunging her into darkness. She would awaken gasping, her sheets tangled around her legs, her heart hammering as though trying to escape her chest. The dreams left her exhausted, their symbolism haunting her waking hours. Amidst this chaos, a glimmer of clarity emerged. During one particularly restless night, Elara retrieved an old journal from the attic, its pages yellowed with age. Flipping through entries written in her younger years, she rediscovered fragments of her former self, the girl who had once dreamed of exploring the stars, who had scribbled poems about love and longing under the guise of anonymity. Reading those words stirred something deep within her, a reminder of the boundless curiosity and courage that had defined her before life's monotony dulled her spirit. Perhaps, she thought, the choice wasn't about abandoning her humanity but reclaiming the parts of herself she had lost along the way. With renewed determination, Elara began to prepare. She tidied the flower shop, pruning the ivy and rearranging the displays with meticulous care. She visited her grandmother more often, savoring their conversations and committing every detail of their interactions to memory. She even wrote letters to friends she hadn't spoken to in years, pouring her heart into words she feared might never be read. Each action felt like a farewell, yet also an affirmation, a way of honoring the life she had lived while steeling herself for the leap into the unknown. But even as she took these steps, doubt continued to shadow her resolve. One afternoon, while walking along the beach, she stumbled upon a shard of glass glittering in the sand. Picking it up, she examined its jagged edges, marveling at how something so broken could still catch the light. The metaphor struck her deeply. Wasn't that what she was doing? Choosing to break apart in order to become something new? The thought brought tears to her eyes, but also a strange sense of peace. Perhaps transformation required sacrifice, and perhaps the pain of letting go was simply the price of growth. That night, as she returned to the cliffs, Elara carried the shard of glass with her, clutching it tightly in her palm. The ocean roared below, its waves crashing against the rocks with relentless fury. Above, the stars burned brightly, their light piercing the veil of her uncertainty. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not to any deity, but to the universe itself, asking for guidance, for strength, for the wisdom to make the right choice. When she opened her eyes, she felt a shift, subtle yet undeniable, as though the cosmos had acknowledged her plea. For the first time since the Queen's departure, Elara felt a flicker of readiness. She didn't have all the answers, and the fear still lingered, coiled tightly in her chest. But she realized that waiting for certainty was futile. The decision demanded faith, not proof. Taking a deep breath, she turned her gaze skyward, searching for the constellation Orion. Somewhere among those distant stars, she believed the Queen was watching, waiting for her response. And though the words had yet to leave her lips, she knew in her heart that she was closer than ever to making her choice. As Elara stood on the cliffs, her eyes fixed on the heavens, she felt a strange warmth spreading through her body, a sensation that began at her fingertips and coursed upward, filling her with an unfamiliar energy. It was as though the universe itself had taken notice of her resolve, responding to the silent plea she had whispered into the void. The shard of glass in her hand glinted faintly, catching the light of the stars above, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw it pulse, as if alive. Her breath hitched, but she didn't drop it. Instead, she held it tighter, drawing strength from its jagged edges. The ocean below seemed to quiet, the waves retreating slightly as though holding their breath. The air grew still, charged with anticipation, and then, without warning, the sky erupted in a cascade of shimmering lights. They weren't stars or meteors, they were streams of opalescent energy, weaving together like threads in an intricate tapestry. Elara's heart leapt as she recognized them, the same crystalline structures she had seen that fateful night weeks ago, now descending once more toward Earth. This time, however, there was no hesitation in her step. She knew what awaited her. The figures emerged from the glowing formations, their silvery forms materializing on the beach below. Among them stood the Queen, radiant and commanding, her presence eclipsing everything else. Her luminous eyes locked onto Elara's, and in that instant, all doubt dissolved. There was no need for words. The connection between them transcended language, resonating in a frequency only they could hear. Elara's legs moved of their own accord, carrying her down the rocky path to the shore, where the alien beings formed a circle around her and the Queen. "You have made your choice," the Queen said, her voice reverberating not just in Elara's mind but in the very core of her being. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, laced with both triumph and tenderness. Elara nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the salty breeze, as she extended her trembling hand toward the Queen. The shard of glass fell from her grasp, shattering against the sand, its fragments scattering like stardust. The Queen took her hand, and the moment their fingers intertwined, a surge of energy unlike anything Elara had ever experienced coursed through her. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, an awakening of senses she hadn't known existed. Colors became sharper, sounds richer, and emotions deeper. She felt herself expanding, stretching beyond the confines of her human form, yet remaining wholly herself. The Queen's essence enveloped her, merging with hers in a way that defied logic but felt utterly natural. For the first time in her life, Elara understood what it meant to truly belong. Around them, the silvery figures began to chant, or perhaps sing, in voices that harmonized with the rhythm of the universe. The sound was indescribable, a symphony of creation and destruction, of beginnings and endings. The ground beneath their feet shimmered, transforming into a surface that resembled liquid starlight. Slowly, the circle ascended, lifting Elara and the Queen into the sky. Below, the ocean faded into darkness, replaced by an endless expanse of galaxies and nebulae. She looked back one last time at the cliffs, at the tiny speck of her world disappearing into the distance, and felt not sadness but gratitude, for the life she had lived, and for the infinite possibilities ahead. When they reached the crystalline structure hovering in orbit, it opened like a flower blooming in reverse, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, golden light. Inside, Elara saw visions, not dreams, but glimpses of futures yet unwritten. Worlds thriving under twin suns, civilizations built upon floating islands, and beings whose forms defied comprehension. And at the center of it all was her, standing beside the Queen, her presence woven into the fabric of these wonders. "This is our beginning," the Queen whispered, her voice a melody that echoed through eternity. "Together, we will create legacies that span lifetimes, bonds that transcend dimensions. You are mine, and I am yours." Elara smiled, her fear giving way to awe. She realized now that saying yes wasn't about leaving something behind, it was about becoming something greater. As the chamber sealed shut and the ship accelerated into the cosmos, she closed her eyes, letting the hum of the universe fill her soul. For the first time in her life, she felt complete. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of countless stars, Elara stepped into forever, her heart beating in sync with the rhythm of the cosmos. Together, she and the Queen would forge a destiny written in starlight, a love story etched into the annals of infinity.